What is going on, YouTube? It is Primitive here, and today I'm bringing you another conversational style video talking about my thoughts on the current state of the Digimon trading card game after I've been gone for a year. But before I get into my thoughts now, I think it's going to be pretty important for me to talk about why I left the game after the 2022 Nationals, and that might put a little bit more weight on my thoughts of the current game as far as a metagame and design standpoint. I originally left the game for a couple reasons. The first one was that from BT9 to BT11, also known as BT9 Part 1, 2, and 3, was one of, if not the worst metagames of any card game I've played in my 20 years of playing card games. It was 110% matchup roulette. Didn't really matter how much time you put into the game or how you built your deck or how you piloted your deck. There were just going to be 2, 3, 4 different decks to where your opponent would flip over the egg. You would know what deck they were playing, and you would know before the game even started whether you were going to win or lose that match. This narrative was also shared with a lot of other top players and content creators that are my friends and people I talked to during this time. They all thought it was pretty much the same boat, and for someone like me who's highly competitive, puts a lot of time in the game, travels to all these events, it's not worth it for me to play the game and travel to all these events if I'm going to put in all this time and I'm just going to hit an auto loss matchup 2 or 3 times through Swiss, and then I don't make top cut. It was completely unrewarding, and when I lost my top 32 match at that Nationals, I thought I was never going to play the Digimon trading card game ever again, at least this iteration of the Digimon trading card game. The other reason I left the game was the community started to get incredibly toxic. It was a daily basis where I would wake up and I would see my Twitter or my Discord DMs, and I would just get paragraphs of hate about how I'm a terrible human being because I put somebody's favorite deck at tier 3 instead of tier 0, even though tier 3 itself was probably me being very nice to the deck. And so I thought it was completely ridiculous. It was making me hate Digimon, which was is my favorite IP from my childhood, more so than Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh!, Zoids, things like this. Digimon was it. I loved Digimon, and I was getting to a point where the card game wasn't fun anymore, the community was toxic, and I just didn't want to be a part of it anymore. So I had to make the call to step away after that. There was the announcement of Battle Spirit Saga with the $1 million prize pool, and there was just other avenues of card games if I wanted to go to. I was still sponsored by Rocky Mountain Collectibles, which also sponsored one of the best Yu-Gi-Oh! Teams of all time, so I could have taken that route. There was Battle Spirits, there was One Piece coming out, there was just way better things for me to do than play this Digimon game that at this point I just wasn't in love with anymore. But now I took a year off and I'm coming back, and the reason I'm coming back is because I have a different mindset. I have grown as a person. I am going to be completely honest, I just don't really have the capacity to really care about what other people think of me anymore. So when it comes to all those DMs and stuff, I look back at it now and I kind of laugh at the fact that it affected me so much and that it made influence my decisions at all. I think it's completely ridiculous. And also, I just don't really have the plans to be the best at the Digimon trading card game. When I was playing the game, the goal was to be the best player in the world, to win worlds, to win every event I went to, whatever, right? I just wanted to be the best. But now I just want to come back to this game that I loved and this IP that I love and just make some content. A lot of people have told me that they really enjoy my content and the things that I make and the knowledge level that I had and things like that. And so it's something, when it comes to content creation, I think I'm pretty decent at as far as being able to provide some high level content for you all. And so I just wanted to come back with a different mindset instead of being number 1 in the world and trying to people please everybody. That's not what I wanted. I just wanted to come back, start streaming, start making YouTube content, short form content, and YouTube shorts and TikTok and stuff, and just having fun with the game and hanging out with my friends. So now let's talk about the current state of the game. I've been back for about a month now, and I have been somewhere between casual and competitive. I have been going to locals 1, 2, 3 times a week in those times, being able to stock up on some footage so that way I can learn the metagame, playing matches and testing so that way I can further learn the metagame and what decks are going on and see what the game is like now. And I will say I think the game is in a infinitely better spot than it might have ever been previously. I think BT8 was a pretty good metagame as far as the health of the game and as far as matchups and things go, but currently right now I think the power level of the game and the current decks that are in the tier 1, 2 slot are pretty fair. Obviously Apocalypse is a little bit of an issue, but the new design team did a very good job of saying, hey, my bad, this is not good for tournament play and we are going to restrict it. We know this is going to be upsetting for some people because it is going to be the secret rare, and that means that you could have wasted money trying to get 4 Pokemon and now you're only going to play 1, but it did give us the heads up before the cards came out and everything. And I think although Apocalypse itself was a mistake from the design perspective, I do think that the new design team is doing incredibly well in being able to update the restricted list. We had Tommy and Savior come off of the restricted list, which I've been saying there are multiple cards that probably should have come off the restricted list. I still think there's more cards that should come off the restricted list, or try doing semi-limited at 2 and things like this. I think there's a lot of work that can be done in the restricted list, but showing frequent updates is something that I think is very promising for the health of the game and just competition going forward in general. Something that I think can make the game last a lot longer than it would have if we didn't start getting frequent ban list updates. And I got to applaud the new dev team because I do think that they have been making some really good card design choices outside of Apocalypse. A lot of the new security triggers I think are not as crazy as they were, BT 1 through 8 or so, where we saw these 8 cost option cards that just said security, activate main effect, ultimate flare, iron fisted onslaught, things like this, where your opponent just swings in and they get to play 8 memories worth of card for free. That could just completely devastate your board and completely change the game. Now, security is still going to be one of the biggest downsides of the game. I think the security triggers are way too powerful. That's why back when I was playing, I took advantage of security control, Beal Starmon, things like that, because security is just the strongest mechanic in the game, and to get the biggest edge, you would have to take advantage of the fact that security bombs are completely game warping, and if you can use that for your advantage, you can put yourself in really good positions consistently. Security is something that still needs to be fixed going forward, I think, but I'm not really sure how to do it in a really good way. You would have to kind of design cards going forward to have these different security triggers where it doesn't say activate main effect. It could do something maybe different, add to your hand, so that way you still have to pay the 7-8 it costs to be able to play these cards for their full power. But to be able to get rid of all these old security cards that have these activate main effect, huge power effects that just completely influence security, it's going to have to come with a rotation. And I'm not someone who's a big fan of rotations. I don't think that's how I would want to go about it. But I'm not really sure how you would do that without essentially reprinting every security card or rotting every single card. And that's just something that is completely unrealistic outside of doing a rotation. And so I do think that coming back to the game, security is still as detrimental and as important as it was when I left, and that was one of the things that I think was a downside of Digimon, was that security was a little bit too powerful. And coming back, I don't really think that changed too much. One thing that is better about it is that a lot of the decks right now aren't really playing these high impact security cards or these high impact option cards that can be in security that we were playing in before. We see cards now like trainings and memory boost and things like that. These are cards where they are very powerful, but when you play them, your whole board doesn't get cleared, or your opponent doesn't get put in a position where they can just auto win because they just hit something. They just hit a card that they don't even have to pay memory for, that completely warps the game state. Another great thing, though, that the new dev team has done is introduced the Ace cards and the Blast Digivolve mechanic. I think this is very huge. Interestingly enough, there wasn't interaction on your opponent's turn previous to this, which is something that I know a lot of people, it turned a lot of people off from Digimon because they come from other games where there's a lot of interaction on your opponent's turn, and so it kind of shows Digimon as a solitaire type game where you just sit there and watch your opponent play the game until it's your turn, and you can't really do anything about it outside of maybe blocking or, again, hitting a security trigger. But adding the ace mechanics, I think, added a lot of dynamic to the game. Being able to put different ace cards over whatever deck you're playing in, and it doesn't have to necessarily be archetype specific, I think is very big, because that means in deck building you can get an advantage in some matchups by just being able to go, I know in this matchup they're going to swing here, and so you can blast here to do whatever, right? With the Metal Garurumon ace, you have the Blast Digivolve, pitch 3 to pass turn, with the battle protection from the Gabumon X or Garurumon X, so that way if your opponent swings in, you can blast, pass turn. If they're not at that 12k DP threshold, then they trade into you, or if they try to swing into it, then you can use that battle protection, go to your turn, swing, trash, delete the lowest level, things like that. I think the ace mechanic is very good for the game. The overflow really stabilizes it as well, because it doesn't make it just this super broken mechanic where you just turbo spam ace cards every single turn, and that's just how that's how the game would probably turn to if there wasn't that overflow mechanic. But overflow makes it a lot more stable and a lot more healthy for the game. And I think that the ace mechanic, having something to operate on your opponent's turn, is very nice. I think it would probably benefit to have something else that we could do as well. Being able to have something else besides the ace mechanic that can allow you to play on your opponent's turn, I think is going to be good for competition and just the general health of the game, because being able to do that will probably lower the chances that we see tier 0 formats going forward. Now, the current metagame is actually pretty good. Outside of a Pokemon getting hit, I think there aren't anything that's super crazy. We have decks like the Numemon deck, which is very powerful, but I think does have some weaknesses in cards like Death Exmon, for example. They can go very wide. Being able to de-Digivolve is very good. Bounce effects such as Cocytus Breath are very good to be able to get through the Numemon X, so that way your opponent isn't able to just turbo spam Platinum Numemons and go into Merciful mode or whatever they want to go for. These things you are able to have some sort of weakness for these decks. The Divas, I think, is very strong, being able to, just play level 5s into your Raising, promote, have all these Blast Digivolves that you go into with the Bonmumon or Zulong, whatever. I think these decks are super cool, and they aren't super polarizing, as to where back when I left, it was Melga, it was Grandis, it was Crossheart, and that was it. And then those were the decks. As to where right now, I feel like there is a large variety of decks that can be viable. We have Lugamon, we have D-Brigade, Anubismon obviously is getting hit, but Anubismon was around and still can be around. There was a variety of decks that are played in the metagame that I think hit a healthy level of power level. Now, obviously, I haven't been playing for a year, so maybe the fact that I've just been playing at a local level and watching online stuff and following tournament reports, maybe my perception on decks like Fenrir, Lugamon, and Anubismon are maybe a little bit skewed, because I haven't had the experience of playing them at a large-scale event such as Nationals or Regionals, and maybe that could change my opinion, and maybe some decks are a little too strong. But I will say, I don't think there's any deck right now that is at BT9 Metal Garurumon level, right? There are strong decks, there are tier 2 decks, but there aren't these just three, just like the triangle of metagame. It expands out, which is healthy in some degree, because the more decks that are out there, the more accessibility you have to be able to top with decks that you enjoy. But it's also a bit unhealthy, because the more decks that are in the metagame, it's harder to prepare for as a competitor. If there's only 3 decks in the metagame, you only have to really prepare for 3 decks. If there's 10 decks in the metagame, then you have to prepare for 10 decks. And so it's a lot harder in deck building and preparation and things like that. Digimon, I think, is sitting in a really good spot right now. I think it's something where coming back to the game after a year, and the past year, me thinking that the game was slowly dying, or rapidly dying more so, and I didn't know if there was going to be a next year of Digimon trading card game, but now I'm coming back. I can see this game surviving for many years to come. The new design team is doing very well. I think the new designed cards are very good. I think the new mechanics are very nice. As long as we don't have another Apoclymon issue, I think it's going to be very good. Or at least if we do have an Apoclymon type card that comes out and it's just way too powerful, if they are proactive to be able to hit it again, then I think it could be nice. But I think they might have learned their lesson from Apoclymon, so that way they don't make that mistake again and can just not design those cards and fill that slot with something that you can play as a 4 of, instead of just having Apoclymon get hit essentially before it ever came out. Obviously, we have a few weeks of Apoclymon at full power, but it was announced that the card was going to get hit before the card came out, so in my eyes, it was kind of hit before it was even released. And I think if we can avoid that, then the Digimon trading card game is going to be in a very good spot going forward. I think the current metagame is incredibly enjoyable. I think it's something to where it's rewarding in play, in deck building, in knowledge, and it's just completely 180'd from when I left the game. And that is something that I am super happy about, because I love this game. I love Digimon, and it was very hard for me to leave the game and leave something that I loved, because it was just not what it was when I started. But now that I'm coming back, I feel like I'm playing Digimon, starting all over again, just like I did in BT 1.5/BT 4 when I was just getting into the game, and it wasn't just this one deck turbo meta that it was. I guess BT5 was kind of a one deck turbo meta, but this game feels very good right now. It feels very healthy, and I'm very excited for it, and I'm excited to make more content, bring that to you all. But that's going to be it for this conversation. I just wanted to give you all my thoughts on the Digimon card game, because I have been people asking me, what do I think of the game after coming away for a year as somebody who was incredibly knowledgeable at the game and was competing a lot, and then went away and coming back and seeing my first thoughts of the metagame. This is kind of where I'm at, and I'm excited to bring you all some more content. And with that being said, I'll catch you all next time. Peace. Peace out.